Hey everyone, it's your girl Maddie here, aka Beaver Mosh, and today I'm talking to you about Monoliths of Wrath from the Germany-based band Lucifuge, and this is coming off of Dying Victims Productions. And Lucifuge plays on their fifth album a honed-in blackened thrash, their take on it. And as I've said in past reviews, this is not necessarily a fusion of genres that is lacking in bands. There are plenty of acts combining black metal and thrash. However, Lucifuge stands out to me on this album with just how nasty and gritty their version is. The black metal elements are more coming from that Bathory, Venom, early Sodom black metal. And it's a record that is still keeping its full-on thrash identity. And then they blend it with a very old school sound with calls to just vintage heavy metal. Yet it still sounds fresh. It's really a recipe for success on this album. From Cosmos to Chaos, kick things off with these speeding guitars that have these whirlwind trailing licks attached, and the vocals come through very harsh and tastefully strained and just really ugly. The production style, you could tell, is very honed in, but it still goes for something very gritty and uninviting, and I love some of the more traditional vintage heavy metal licks that they throw in, and you can tell that's intentional in what they are going for, because on their Bandcamp it does say that they are inspired by the new wave of British heavy metal. This track just feels mean in a very convincing way. The Cult of Infinity begins to introduce some of that black metal iciness within the thrash. The dark melodic runs you're getting here weave in seamlessly within the crunchiness of the rest of the guitars. The drums are doing that D-beat thing here. They are recorded in a purposely unpolished way. I really like how raw the band elected to just keep this entire record. And I really appreciate how the band is sometimes able to just break things down into a slower, more groove-oriented approach when it musically makes sense, just to throw it back into full speed and ferocity without much notice at all. Before the Altar of Famine and Desire just sounds like the golden era of thrash. These riffs could have found themselves on Bonded by Blood, and listeners to the record at that time wouldn't be confused. And the vocals here come more into this like possessed snarl. It's really unsettling. I like how the solo kind of plays evenly in its mixing with everything else. It gives the track an interesting spaciness, I feel. Kind of pulls you into the leads through the walls of riffs. Visions of Death opens up with these fiery chugs. It's just pure violence. Then you get these devilish minor key licks that are designed to feel like they are conjuring up hell right in front of you. There are some more standard black metal tremolos thrown in as well. It's not missing those. Although maybe not as trebly, it still has a very thrash skeleton to it. The bass is not slacking on this record as well, often playing somewhat independently from what the guitar is doing, adding its own murky violence to the mix. There is just a sinister lead. It's lyrical and melodic in the most disturbing and ominous packaging. Enemies of the Sun comes through with these brooding, stomping riffs that march on in the intro before we get these chilling and depraved melodic licks that are actually rather infectious and earwormy, especially with how rhythmically they are played. Dissolving into God has this more open and spacious section with these dark held chords and dissonant weaving riffs before evolving into these thick lumbering guitars. It feels kind of early Metallica inspired. And I love some of the dizzying hammer-on licks that the guitars are doing here as well. Never really lets off and just feels very unbalancing in a very fun way. On the art of putrescence, I really enjoy how the vocals feel more like these dark chants over these slithering guitars. This track in particular has an interesting sense of mood. There's a lot of space to it. Probably the least busy cut on the entire record. But there is this absolutely gnarly and face-ripping break on this track. The bass is punching, the guitars are sawing, and the drummer is beating up the kick with vigor. All in this slow down passage of disgust. Resources of self-destruction is very black metal. Even with these incessant rhythms you're getting from the drums, and then you get these cold arpeggios and just this overall hostile atmosphere that you expect from black metal. The vocalist feels like they're speaking to these dark spirits in a cavern. Still, even though this is more black metal leaning, there's still these thrash riffs that are thrown here and there. It's not missing. It just feels like a perfect recipe that I'm here for. Probably my favorite cut on the record. On Physiognomy of Failure, I love how the guitars roll on with full force, while the bass and the drums stay back a bit with these stop and start bursts played very physically. It's a very dynamic intro. You get this squealing lead towards the beginning of the track that feels like it came straight out of the 1980s. I love how this record feels fresh and contemporary, yet simultaneously old school and vintage as hell. The Path to Perdition features these fluttering black metal guitars that just pierce through with the most focused eye. And the vocals come through with this despondency paired with the very witchy guitars. It feels emotive and lifeless at the same time. And the drums sound the largest they've been the entire record. They're just gradually getting bigger and more vicious as the track rolls on to the album's conclusion. Monoliths of Wrath just comes in, takes names, and leaves, and in doing so marks an impact. This is just aggressive, ugly, gnarly, blackened thrash metal that I think will draw in fans from both metal traditions. The vocals here are just so corrupted and the riffs just tear, and it's all put together in a very well packaged and raw demeanor. If you want to explore blackened thrash and want to see how good that fusion can be, you should check this record out. And hey, those are my thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, consider hitting the like button. Subscribe, it would mean the world to me. Really helps get the video out there. Leave a comment. I really enjoy engaging with those. I have a Twitter you can follow. Link to that is in the bio of this YouTube channel. I do have a Ko-Fi that I mention from time to time. If that's a way you want to support the show, feel no pressure, but it's available. Keep it metal. My name is Maddie, aka Beavermosh, and I'm signing off.